In the golden age of television, one show captured America's heart like no other. I Love Lucy wasn't just entertainment, it was a cultural phenomenon that defined an era. But behind the laughter, the pratfalls, and those unforgettable Lucy, you got some splainin' to do moments, lay real people with extraordinary lives, hidden struggles, and untold stories. Today, we pull back the curtain on what happened to the beloved cast of television's most iconic sitcom. Some stories will warm your heart, others will break it, and a few will shock you to your core. When I Love Lucy premiered on October 15, 1951, television was still in its infancy. Little did the world know that this simple story of a Cuban bandleader and his zany American wife would become the blueprint for every sitcom that followed. But this wasn't just another TV show, it was lightning in a bottle. A perfect storm of talent, timing, and real-life chemistry that could never be replicated. The magic began with Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, two performers whose on-screen chemistry was so electric because it mirrored their tumultuous real-life marriage. Behind those perfectly timed pratfalls and comedic genius lay a woman who had clawed her way through decades of Hollywood rejection, and a man who had fled revolution in Cuba with nothing but his talent and determination. The supporting cast: Vivian Vance as the sharp-tongued Ethel Mertz and William Frawley as her cantankerous husband, Fred, weren't just sidekicks. They were master performers in their own right, each carrying secrets and dreams that would shape their destinies long after the cameras stopped rolling. Together, these four created something unprecedented. A show that would air continuously for over 7 decades, touching generations of families and becoming a cultural touchstone that transcended time itself. But success in Hollywood is often a double-edged sword, and for the cast of I Love Lucy, their greatest triumph would also become their greatest challenge. The show that made them household names would also trap them, define them, and in some cases, consume them entirely. When the final episode of I Love Lucy aired in 1957, Lucille Ball stood at the pinnacle of her career. She wasn't just America's sweetheart, she was a pioneering businesswoman, the first woman to run a major television studio, and arguably the most powerful person in Hollywood. But behind that radiant smile and those expressive eyes lay a woman haunted by loneliness, betrayal, and the crushing weight of expectations. After her divorce from Desi Arnaz in 19, Lucy's personal life became a series of attempts to recapture the magic she had lost. Her marriage to comedian Gary Morton in 1961 was meant to provide stability, but those close to her whispered that it felt more like a business arrangement than a love story. Morton, though devoted, could never fill the void left by Desi's passionate presence. Professionally, Lucy continued to shine, but the industry was changing around her. The Lucy Show, and later Here's Lucy, kept her in the public eye, but critics and audiences increasingly viewed them as pale imitations of her earlier work. The comedy world that had once revered her began to see her as a relic. Desperately clinging to past glory, in her final years, Lucy became increasingly reclusive, surrounding herself with a small circle of trusted friends and family. Those who visited her Beverly Hills home described a woman still sharp and funny, but deeply melancholy. She would spend hours watching old episodes of I Love Lucy, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying at the memories of a time when life seemed simpler and love felt real. Lucy's death on April 26, 1989, marked the end of an era, but the circumstances surrounding her final days revealed a woman who had never truly learned to live for herself. Always performing, always on, even when the audience had long since gone home. What the public never knew was the depth of Lucille Ball's private anguish. Friends who spoke after her death painted a picture of a woman who had given everything to her craft and her audience, leaving little for herself. The comedian who had brought joy to millions struggled with profound depression, a condition that was rarely discussed or understood in her era. Lucy's relationship with her children, Lucy Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr., was complicated by the demands of fame and the shadow of their father's legacy. Both children would later speak candidly about growing up in the spotlight, how their mother's perfectionism extended beyond the television studio into their daily lives. Lucy demanded excellence from everyone around her, but perhaps no one faced higher expectations than her own offspring. The financial pressures that came with running Desilu Productions took their toll as well. While Lucy was praised as a pioneering female executive, the stress of managing a major studio while maintaining her performing career left her exhausted and emotionally drained. She would often work 18-hour days, perfectionist to the core, never satisfied that anything was quite good enough. In her later years, Lucy became obsessed with her legacy, constantly worried about how she would be remembered. She granted fewer interviews, became more selective about public appearances, and seemed to retreat into herself. Those closest to her described a woman who had given so much of herself to the world that she had forgotten who she was when the cameras weren't rolling. The truth no one dared to say was that America's beloved Lucy was, in many ways, one of Hollywood's loneliest figures, surrounded by admirers but truly known by very few. Desi Arnaz's story reads like a Hollywood screenplay. Migrant makes good, conquers America, then watches his empire crumble through his own self-destructive choices. But the real story of what happened to Desi after I Love Lucy is far more complex and ultimately more human than the tabloid headlines ever suggested. After his divorce from Lucy, Desi threw himself into business ventures with the same passionate intensity he had once reserved for his marriage. He expanded Desilu Productions, developed new television shows, and proved that his business acumen was every bit as sharp as his musical talent. But success couldn't fill the void left by losing the woman he truly loved. Even if he had been incapable of remaining faithful to her, Desi's personal life became a revolving door of relationships with younger women, each one seemingly an attempt to recapture his youth or perhaps to punish himself for losing Lucy. His drinking, always a problem, became more pronounced. Friends described nights when the charming, sophisticated bandleader would disappear, replaced by the bitter man who couldn't understand why he had sabotaged the best thing in his life. In 1963, Desi married Edith Mack Hirsch, a woman 20 years his junior who brought stability to his chaotic life. But even this second chance at happiness was overshadowed by his deteriorating relationship with his children and his ongoing health problems. The stress of building and running a television empire had taken its toll on his body, and by the 1970s, he was battling serious heart problems. What the public didn't know was that throughout all his successes and failures, Desi never stopped loving Lucy. Friends reported that he would call her regularly, their conversations a mixture of business, nostalgia, and barely suppressed emotion. As Desi Arnaz entered his final decades, the passionate fire that had driven him to success began to dim. He sold his stake in Desilu Productions to Lucy in 1962, officially ending their business partnership but never truly severing their emotional connection. The man who had once commanded television studios and concert halls found himself increasingly isolated, haunted by what might have been. Desi's move to Del Mar, California, in the 1970s marked a new chapter in his life. He bred horses, played golf, and attempted to find peace in a quieter existence. But those close to him observed that he seemed to be going through the motions of retirement rather than truly enjoying it. The competitive drive that had made him successful in television never found a satisfactory outlet in his later years. His health continued to deteriorate. Throughout the 1980s, a lifetime of smoking, drinking, and stress had ravaged his cardiovascular system. Yet even as his body failed him, Desi maintained the charm and dignity that had made him a star. Visitors to his Del Mar home described a man still capable of captivating a room, still telling stories with the same flair that had made him famous. The most poignant chapter of Desi's later life was his reconciliation with Lucy. As both faced their mortality, their old wounds began to heal. They would spend hours on the phone, reminiscing about their glory days and expressing regrets about their failures. Lucy would later say that despite everything, Desi remained the love of her life. When Desi died on December 2, 1986, Lucy was devastated. She had lost her greatest collaborator, her most passionate adversary, and the one person who truly understood the price they had both paid for their success. While America laughed at Ethel Mertz's sharp tongue and frumpy appearance, few realized they were watching one of the most accomplished actresses of her generation. Vivian Vance had been a Broadway star, a serious dramatic actress who had sacrificed her own ambitions to become Lucy's perfect foil. But the price of that decision would haunt her for the rest of her life. Vivian Vance's relationship with I Love Lucy was complicated from the beginning. She was actually younger than Lucille Ball, but the show's concept required her to appear older and less attractive. This meant dowdy costumes, unflattering makeup, and a carefully crafted image that was the antithesis of glamour. For a woman who had once been considered one